Hi friends, it's Mr. Alex from Adams Memorial Library, and I'm back with another awesome Art Attack project. Now, as usual, we'll be a creator of tales, and this week's tale is the tale of a fox, or a kitsune. So, we're going to be making our very own kitsune masks. Let me show you what we'll need from either your Art Attack kit or supplies at home to go ahead and get started. For our kitsune mask project today, we're going to need just a couple of things. The first thing that we're going to need is obviously the mask itself, but then we're going to want to decorate it. So we'll need felt in 3 different colors, red, white, and gold, as well as the patterns for our embellishments and a sheet of cardstock to reinforce them. In order to trace and cut out our embellishments, we're going to need a marker and a pair of scissors. And then to hold everything together, we're going to need some tacky glue and a brush to spread it, as well as these binder clips here that we're going to use to clamp everything down. So go ahead and gather all of that up, either from your Art Attack bag or at home, and we'll get started. Our first step in making our kitsune mask is that we are going to want to attach our piece of white felt overlaid on our paper mache mask. And the best way that I found to do this is that we're going to take our glue brush and our tacky glue, and we're going to just go ahead and brush a thin coat of paint over the entirety of our mask. Now, when I say thin, what I mean is that we don't want it to be so thick that it's like dripping wet off of our mask, but we do want it to be enough glue that it'll hold our felt on, so we want a nice happy medium. So let's go ahead and apply that glue now. Now that we've applied a nice layer of tacky glue over our mask, especially making sure to get those creases on the edge of the mask and around the eyes, then we're going to take our piece of white felt and we're going to carefully overlay it onto our mask. And as we do this, we want to make sure that we are pressing in so that our felt is filling in all of those ridges and grooves in the mask and adhering perfectly to it. The other thing that we want to make sure that we do as we're applying our felt to our mask is that we want to make sure that we leave enough area around the edge of the mask that we'll have enough to tuck it over, because that's going to be the next step of our project. So now that I have our felt attached to our mask like this, and I really press down across the entire mask to make sure that it's adhering to the glue, then our next step is going to be to hold that felt in place. And in order to do that, that's where our binder clips come in. So we're just going to take our binder clips, and in a few strategic places, especially around the nose of the mask and perhaps around the top as well, we're just going to add those binder clips to hold our felt onto our mask. And just like all of our other Art Attack projects this summer, this one is going to require a lot of patience. So we're going to be patient and we're going to let our glue set and attach our felt to our kitsune mask. While we're waiting, there are a couple of different things that we can do. And the first thing that you can do, once you have all of your clips attached like this and you've pressed down on your felt and are pretty confident that it's going to dry in place, we're going to set that aside. And the first thing that you can do is get your Tales packet. And in that packet, there's going to actually be 2 sheets that look something like this that have stories about foxes and kitsune that you can read to learn more about their story. If you can't wait to keep working on your craft, then what you can do is set your glue aside very gently so that we don't get any glue anywhere, just like last time with our mermaid craft. And then for this art project, we are going to need to add some features to our fox mask and to make it look a little bit more like a kitsune. So in order to do that, we have all of these templates that I've gone ahead and cut out that were on our sheet. And in order to reinforce them, we're going to need to do that with some cardstock. So what you can do while you're waiting for your glue to dry is to trace each of these different features onto your cardstock. Something that you want to keep in mind is that while there's only one pattern, you may need multiples of some of these pieces and in different orientations. So for instance, if I'm tracing this ear here, then this is something that I'm going to need 2 of because my kitsune is going to have 2 ears. And it's really important that we make sure that the orientation is correct. For these ears, it doesn't matter. But for instance, for these whiskers that our fox is going to have that look a little bit like a mustache, we still want 2 of them, but if I trace 2 of them in this direction, it's not going to look quite right. So I actually want to trace one in this direction, flip it over, and trace one like this so that we'll have two pieces that go together. And I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done tracing. Now that we're done tracing, we have the following pieces. We have two ear pieces, two ear tips, a nose, and two inner ear pieces. And these, the orientation doesn't really matter on. We just need two of them, except for the nose, which we only need one of. We have the eye outlines, and these we need two of, but they do need to be facing opposite directions. So you can see I have one facing this way and one facing this way. I just changed my pattern over and flipped it. And then we have our two mustache or whisker pieces, and these are facing opposite directions as well. So we have all of our pattern pieces traced to reinforce our felt width, and we're going to go ahead and cut those out. Now, after a lot of cutting, I have all of my different pieces for the embellishments of my Kitsune mask cut out of cardstock. And since our mask is still going to need even more time to dry, the next step that I can do is that I can take my felt, the gold and the red, and I can cut these same pieces out of the felt. Now, something that I haven't really talked about a whole lot on this video so far is that this is an art attack project, meaning that no two pieces of art are going to look exactly the same. So while, for instance, I'm going to cut my whiskers, eye pieces, and inner ears out of red felt, and my nose and ear tips out of gold felt, you don't have to cut them in the exact same way. You could put different pieces on different colors of felt, and that would be totally fine. I'm also going to need to grab some additional white felt so that I can cut out the base of my ears. But we're going to do that later. For right now, I'm just going to focus on these red and gold embellishments. I'm going to take my marker, I'm going to trace each of those embellishments again on felt, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut them out. After letting our mask dry with the felt attached, and tracing and cutting out our additional felt embellishments, we are now ready to start assembling things. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to our mask with the piece of white felt over it quickly. And as I mentioned before, we're going to want to create a lip of felt over the edge of the back. And what this is going to do is create a nice folded look on the front of our mask and help secure our felt even better. So in order to do this, we'll want to do just a couple of things. The first thing is take our pair of scissors, and we want to cut an edge around the outside of our mask. Now, we don't want to cut too close. If we cut it too close, there's not going to be enough to fold over. But if we don't cut it at all, some of this felt might show up on our eye, through our eye holes, and it might make the mask a little bit bulky to wear. So we're just going to cut around the edge of our mask in the same pattern with a nice generous amount of extra felt. So we'll have something that looks like this. And that way we'll have just enough felt to bend it over and glue it onto our mask. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the bottom. And once we've done that, it will be time to glue. So we definitely want to make sure that we get that glue brush and tacky glue all ready to go. So we've got something like this, and now all I'm going to do is take my glue and my brush, and I'm going to take a nice helping of glue and put it onto our felt. You can also put some onto the paper mache mask if you'd like as well. And once we've got glue along the edge of both our felt and mask, and we're pretty confident that it's enough that it will allow it to stick, we're just going to take this edge and fold it over our mask, carefully attaching it and adhering it to the felt. Now, as you can see, because the glue is still wet, our felt doesn't really want to stay attached to our mask, and that is where our binder clips are really going to come in handy. So I'm just going to go along the edge of our mask, and I'm going to attach those binder clips not only at the edges, but also anywhere like this where the felt folds over. Now, since you only have a couple of binder clips in your kit, you may have to do this in sections like I am. So for instance, I have this section here, and I think I'm going to have just enough binder clips to adhere my mask on this section here as well. So what I might want to do is I might want to do just this bottom edge of my mask and then come back to the top edge later. But once that's all ready to go, we're going to go ahead and set that aside to let it adhere and dry. And we can focus back onto our felt embellishments. So I went and cut all of those out, including the white bases for the ears. And I've kept a selection of our reinforcement cardstock as well. Now, I chose not to keep all of it, and the reason for that is that I like to be able to glue the felt to the felt. But if you want the features of your Kitsune mask to be even more rigid and stand by themselves, then it might not hurt to do what I'm about to do to each of the pieces. The first thing that we're going to want to assemble is our ears. And so in order to assemble our ears, all we're going to do is take our piece of support cardstock that's reinforcing our ear, and we're going to put a nice helping of glue onto that cardstock. Once we do that, we're going to take our felt and we're just going to attach it like this onto the cardstock. And by pressing down, it will attach it and we'll allow that to dry. Now, instead of being floppy, like this piece of felt here that doesn't stand on its own, our felt is reinforced by the cardstock. Some important things to note is that I did take the sides of my cardstock and felt that had my marker markings on them, and I turned them inside so that you will not be able to see them from the front. And you might not be able to do this with every piece, but the pieces that you can do this with, it'll really help out. And then I am just going to repeat that with each of my other pieces. The only pieces that I can't really do this with are my eyes, because those are going to have to go over my mask. But I can go ahead and assemble my ears and assemble my whiskers by attaching them to the cardstock. Additionally, once this piece of my ear has dried, I can go ahead and take my glue, brush some of it onto my red felt for the inner ear, and then go ahead and attach that onto my base. Set that aside and glue my ear like this. Then we may also want to attach the tips of our ears. So again, we'll take our glue brush, add some glue, and go ahead and put that right on the tip of our Kitsune's ears. And that is going to give us something that looks like this. So, as I mentioned, we'll repeat that process for the other ear. We'll attach our whiskers to our cardstock, let all of that dry, and come back ready for our next step. Now, after letting our Kitsune mask dry, we have our base of our mask with the back edge folded over. And I also took some time to cut out the eye holes as well, because I wanted to check and make sure that all of the glue was actually drying and holding the felt to our mask. So you may want to do this as well before you begin the step of the project that I'm about to show you. Then I have our reinforced earpieces that are super sturdy, as well as our reinforced nose, which I didn't mention in the last part, but you definitely don't want to forget. Then I also have our reinforced whiskers and our eyepieces that are going to go onto our mask. So now, finally, after a lot of gluing, cutting, and waiting, we are ready to assemble all of the parts of our mask. So we're going to open this glue back up, and we're going to begin assembling the different parts of our mask. For our ears, we want to attach these by putting some glue on the bottom of our ear here and attaching it to the back of our mask, just like this. And you can position your ears in different places. I like putting mine the whole way to the edge but you could put them anywhere that you wanted that you thought looked good. For the eye pieces, we're just going to put them right over the eye holes like that and glue that down, felt to felt. And then finally, we're going to take our whiskers, and you'll notice that there's a flat part by our nose of our mask, and we can actually glue the cardstock just like this to our mask to add those whiskers. Then, once we have both of our whiskers down, the nose will go right over top like this, in the center of the nose on our mask. So, let's go ahead, glue all of that on, clip it up, and we'll be ready to wait for it to dry. Now that we've glued all of our embellishments onto our Kitsune mask and we've clipped them all into place, it's time to let it dry, and when it's finished, we'll have one cool Kitsune mask. Now, don't forget that, again, you may not have quite as many binder clips as I've used here, so you may want to do this in sections, and you definitely want to make sure that your mask is being held together by the clips so that pieces don't fall apart. But once it's done, you'll have a finished Art Attack project. I want to thank everybody who came out with us today to make these Kitsune masks. And don't forget that if you're participating in our summer reading program via Beanstack, that you can go ahead and enter the code MERMAID to get credit for participating in today's program. Entering that code, if you haven't already, will unlock badges and tickets that you can use to earn some of our great prizes. If you'd like to earn even more tickets, you can send a picture of your project to us using our photo release form, and that will unlock your summer reading Shutterbug badge and even more tickets. Finally, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube to get all sorts of updates, not only about the Art Attack program, but all the other great things we're doing here at the library this summer. And as always, happy crafting!